Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blogging Theology. Today, I'm delighted to talk again to Adnan Rashid. You're most welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for having me again, Paul.
Pleasure.
Always.
For those who don't know, Adnan is a historian, a numismatist, traveler, human rights activist, author, supporter of justice and peace, and a bibliophile. We share that last condition. And you can follow him on Twitter at Mr. Adnan Rashid, MR, Adnan Rashid. And as you might know, Adnan has a popular and regularly updated YouTube channel where, for example, you can see his recent thoughts about Andrew Tate accepting Islam. Now, it's a beautiful message, and I'll link to it in the description below. Today, Adnan has kindly agreed to discuss history in 9 amazing coins, and this promises to be a real treat. So over to you, sir.
Thank you for having me, Paul, once again to address your followers and your audiences. Why are we discussing coins? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Coins are very, very important historical, basically historical objects. And coins can tell us so many stories, so many things. People generally don't focus on coins. They don't think about coins as sources of history. So coins are one of the most important sources of learning history, studying history, knowing the past and how people lived, what their cultures were, what their languages were, what the state of the economies was. All these questions can be answered by looking at coins. For example, you can tell by looking at coins as to how prosperous a civilization may have been. Right? If the quantity of gold is good in, let's say, coins coming from a particular dynasty in the past, then that means that particular dynasty or that civilization had access to plenty of gold. Likewise, if you see the quantity of gold decline, if you see the standard of gold decline, then you can see that this civilization was financially, economically struggling. They had to reduce the quantity of gold in their coins, likewise silver and other metals. So by looking at metals or the quantity of the metals in a given set of coinage that was produced by a particular dynasty in the past, you can tell how prosperous, how economically successful that particular dynasty was. So that's why studying coins can tell you so many things. It can teach you so many things about the culture, about the language, about the religion, for that matter, of the people of the past. And we will see today what I mean by that. Okay, we will see when we look at these coins in a rough, rough chronological order, because I'm not discussing every single dynasty that came in between the earliest and the latest coin I will be discussing tonight. But I will try to put these coins in a chronological order so that our audiences can actually understand why these coins are important and what we can learn from them. So let's get cracking straight away. The first coin I have in my hand here is basically from Athens. Okay, I'm gonna try to turn it so that you can see it.
I can see a profile of a lady's face, I think, a profile.
Exactly. So that's Athena. That's Athena. So this coin is from about 450 BC.
Wow.
Before Christ. This is 450 years before Jesus Christ was born. Okay. So that's nearly 2,500 years. This coin is that old. So what you see here, the face of Athena, this coin was minted at Athens. Okay. And
so that coin could have actually been used or touched by Plato, who was alive at roughly that time, I think, in Athens, in ancient Greece.
Exactly. You got it right. You got it right. Plato, Socrates, who knows?
Aristotle,
Aristotle later on, absolutely, no doubt. So this is, yes. I mean, thank you for pointing that out, Paul. That's a very important caveat we have to add. Right. This is what Plato, Socrates and Plato would have used, because Socrates was the teacher of Plato. Yeah. Plato, the man who famously authored his Republic, a very famous book.
Which I'm reading at the moment, by the way. It's an extraordinary book, but anyway, that's different. Yep.
Absolutely. So that's the coin Plato would have used. I mean, it's good to attach these coins to personalities when people can better appreciate them. So you see the face of Athena, the goddess, I mean, the alleged goddess of the Greeks, Athena.
Yes.
Okay. And on the other side, when you turn the coin around, you will be looking at the pictures of these coins.
That's an owl? Because an
You
owl
see
is,
an owl.
yeah.
You see an owl. Okay. And you see an olive branch. You see a small crescent, and then you see the Greek alphabets. Alpha. Okay.
And omega. Oh, is that omega I can see as well?
Alpha, theta, epsilon.
Oh,
Okay?
epsilon. Yeah.
So when you read it together, it makes Athi.
Athi,
Okay?
as in Athens. As in Athens.
Athi stands for Athens, basically, right? Yeah. So it's a very nice specimen. It is the earliest coin I possess in my humble collection, and it is in silver. It's about 16 grams of silver. It is called tetradrachm. Tetradrachm stands for 4 drams. Drams is basically later on what we call the dirham. The term dirham actually originates from the Greek term dram. Okay, so this is tetradrachm. Each dram was approximately 4 grams of silver. Okay, in this period, and even later on. So tetradrachm means 4 drams, and this is 16 grams of silver, or approximately between 16 to 17 grams of silver. So this is an early coin, and this is regarded as one of the earliest coins in human history. I mean, coins were invented or introduced a century before this coin was minted. About 6th century BC, coins were introduced in Lydia. There's a place called Lydia in current-day Turkey where coins were minted. First coins as a form of currency were minted in a place called Lydia. Okay, and that was the 6th century BC. Okay, so about a century before this particular coin you can see in my hand right now.
I mean, do you have any sense of the circulation of these coins? I mean, would they have been used by ordinary people in the market, for example, to buy and sell produce, or would they have been much more restricted to more elite kind of exchanges, kind of symbolically exchanging goods? I mean, just how ubiquitous were they in the economy of Athens, do you think?
No, that's a very good question. You see, this coin was the dollar of the day in the ancient world. It wasn't only used at the time of Plato and Socrates, but rather even later on, this was an accepted currency for centuries. We're talking about 200-300 years after these coins were minted, because the quantity of silver was so good. For some reason, there was an explosion of Greek coinage at this time. That's why the Greeks started to experiment on coins, and some of the Greek coins, when you look at them, they are so beautiful, they are so amazing. There is such amazing artwork on them. One is baffled, simply blown away by the sheer beauty of artwork on these coins. Some of those coins were minted in current-day Sicily, for example, which was also part of the Greek civilization at the time. Right? I think it was called Syracuse. Some of the best coins were minted in Sicily in the 5th century BC or the 4th century BC. So the Greeks pioneered die making. So this is a die-struck coin. There was a die made of iron or bronze, okay, that struck this particular coin. So how would they strike these coins? They would have pieces of silver weighed for the right amount of silver for the right weight, for let's say 16 to 17 grams. They would make it round like this one looks, and then they would place it between this piece of silver. They would warm it, and they would place it between 2 dies, and they would hammer. So both sides would be inscribed with what you see on the coins there: the owl, the olive branch, the small crescent, and the alphabets Athi. Okay, and on the other hand, you see on the other side, this is basically obverse. This is obverse with the face of Athena. Okay, here I think you can see it clearly now. Okay, this is the obverse, and this is the reverse. This is what we call reverse.
This is not a portrait of any historical person. Athena was a Greek god, of course, and the owl symbolized Athens. It also symbolized wisdom, actually, in Greek philosophy. It had kind of several meanings, I think.
Absolutely. So the reason why there was an explosion of silver coinage at this time in the mid 5th century in Athens was because the Greeks had discovered silver mines. Okay, and there was a lot of silver. There was plenty of silver. So these coins are minted in hundreds of thousands, and they are easy to get hold of. They are costly, they are pricey, but you can still get them from good coin experts and coin dealers who can give you a guarantee of originality.
If I was to go to Sotheby's here in London and see this on sale, what would I be expecting to cough up to purchase one of these amazing coins, do you think?
Yeah, this particular one, the one you saw there, it could be anywhere between £1,000 to £3,000, depending on the condition and how good the state of the coin is. If it's used, if it looks used and it's the surface is smooth, then it kind of, it's cheaper. But if it's mint condition and it's been found with a hoard that hasn't been used, it was stored somewhere and found later on, and it's in good condition, those coins can go for high prices, depending on the condition, how good the condition is, right? So that's one of the earliest coins I have here in front of us, which could have been used possibly by Socrates or Plato, right? Absolutely. Next coin I have is also something very, very interesting, okay? This one is a coin minted during the reign of Philip II, the father of Alexander the Great. Sorry, I dropped it.
Alexander the Great, of course, the great spread of Hellenism and Greek culture and military might spread throughout the world. And that's his dad, Alexander the Great's father, is it?
Exactly. But the depiction is of Heracles. This is a young head of Heracles, again, Greek mythology, a Greek mythical figure who was seen to be a very important figure in Greek mythology. So you can see his bust or his effigy depicted on the coin. So this is Heracles, very nicely struck coin with a very clearly defined beard.
Very good condition, isn't it? I mean, all the contours of the portrait are intact. I think they haven't been rubbed away by constant use anyway.
Exactly. And this coin was minted somewhere around 360 BC, between 360 to 336 BC, when Philip himself was alive, Philip II, right? So this is the father of Alexander the Great. His name is actually inscribed on the back of the coin in Greek, Philippoi. I don't know if you can see it. There's a young man on a horse, riding a horse, okay? And on top of the young man, you see the Greek alphabets, okay? And it's clearly written Philippoi. Philippoi is basically Philip, the father of Alexander the Great. It's very clearly inscribed there. And this coin was struck at his capital called Amphipolis. Amphipolis was in Macedonia, and that was the capital of Philip II, the father of Alexander the Great. Okay, again, this is we're looking at the time of Aristotle now. Okay, we've looked at a coin from the time of Socrates and Plato. Now we're looking at a coin from the time of Aristotle, when Aristotle was alive, walking around. Okay.
And Aristotle, of course, taught Alexander the Great. He was a tutor to Alexander the Great for a time before Alexander went off on his campaigns. It's interesting. I mentioned this before. In the West, in Europe, Alexander is known as Alexander the Great. And what did he do? He went out conquering whole peoples and empires. He went thousands of miles to the east, even as far as what's today called India. But of course, there's a certain other person upon whom be peace, who's also not given this title in the West, but Alexander is. And it goes to show the double standards, perhaps, that are utilized in the West, that we can just praise someone who was a conqueror, who took over societies, and yet someone who brought liberation, enlightenment, is simply not accorded that honor, even that little honor.
Yes, absolutely. And things do, unfortunately, appear in history like that. But Alexander, in terms of his territorial expansion, his geographical achievements, he was the great. I would say that. In human terms, I mean, we don't mean the great or the ultimately great. Of course, we don't mean that. But he did achieve great things in terms of territorial expansion and the kind of people he fought. He defeated the Persian emperor at the time, Darius, okay, who was from the Achaemenid Empire, and then he took Persian territory, he took the capital Babylon, okay, and then he went as far as India. This was phenomenal achievement, especially when you are a young man.
But he
Alexander,
died young. He didn't die an old man. He died young, of course.
33 years old. 33 years old. He started in 336 BC and he finished in 323 BC. So he went on for 13 years. In 13 years from Macedonia to India and then back to Babylon where he died. This was a phenomenal achievement at that time in that day and age. He even went to Egypt. He conquered Egypt and then he made his way towards Persia and India. So no doubt in that sense, I mean, if you were to look at his territorial expansion, he did achieve great things, right? Not necessarily morally or in terms of, and you know what? To this day, his expansion has a role to play. How history is formed, how things happen later on. He has a huge influence on our history, so he will never be forgotten for that purpose.
No.
And now that you mention him, this is his coin. This is one of his coins, and it's a very beautiful specimen. If you look carefully, this is Heracles wearing a lion skin on the head.
I thought it was, yeah. That's and strange headgear. I'm not sure I'd wear that, but yeah.
Yeah. So this is Heracles wearing a lion skin, and it is claimed that this was a likeness of Alexander himself. Alexander looked something like this. Some scholars claim that although it is Heracles being depicted on the coin, again, this is a tetradrachm, about 16 to 17 grams of silver. This is a tetradrachm, 4 drams, okay? A very heavy, solid coin with good silver content, okay? So even though this is Heracles being depicted, but Alexander wanted to show himself as Heracles himself, okay? Maybe divine in some sense. So this is Heracles wearing lion skin, and maybe Alexander looked like that. On the other hand, we see Zeus, okay, another mythical figure from Greek mythology. Zeus sitting on a chair or a throne, okay, with an eagle in his hand. Okay, you can see that clearly. You can even see his six packs. This is how clearly he is depicted.
You can see his six packs.
Yeah, you can even seriously, if you, I mean, when you see the magnified image on the screen, which you may be seeing right now, look at his six packs. There is an eagle. He's carrying an eagle. And he's holding this staff.
We've gone from an owl, the symbol of Athens, Greek culture, wisdom, philosophy, to an eagle. So what does the eagle signify in this change, do you think?
I actually don't. That's a very good question. I haven't looked into this, but eagle was used later on by Romans as well as a symbol for the Roman Empire.
The imperial singer of God, this sovereign majesty, this great bird high above the earth, unaffected by. Yeah, I can see the symbolism there.
Yeah. So I'm assuming this is some sort of symbol for victory, or eagle is a sacred bird. I don't know. I don't know the significance of eagle on these coins, but it is eagle depicted on Apollo's. Zeus. Zeus is one hand, and then we have the mint mark under the chair when you see Zeus sitting, and there is a circle underneath on the inside the chair, and that circle signifies the mint mark where the coin was actually minted, and that's Tarsus, current day Turkey. Okay,
of course, Tarsus became very famous for someone else in history.
Exactly, Paul of Tarsus or Saul of Tarsus. Okay, so this coin was minted in Tarsus, the city of Tarsus. A very good specimen, and amazingly, just behind Zeus, you can see some writing in Greek. Right, that's the name of Alexander. It is written in the Greek language Alexandroi. Underneath the chair, the text is cut. It says Basilios. Basilios means king in the Greek language. So it says Basilios Alexandroi. Okay, so this is a very interesting specimen from the reign of Alexander the Great, who ruled from 336 to 323 BC. Okay, about 13 years. Okay, now I mean, I just want to quickly add this coin as a complementary piece for you to look at, even though it's not part of my collection I was going to share with you today. But this is Alexander's coin minted at Babylon. This is where he died. So again, you see Zeus sitting on a chair with an eagle, and underneath the chair you see a sheath. You see a sheath of flowers or something like that. That's the mint mark for Babylon. This coin was minted in Babylon when Alexander had taken Babylon, right? And it is now historically known that Alexander actually died in Babylon. He died in Babylon, having returned from India. So this is a very important piece of information that must be remembered. So it is Alexander, basically the head of Heracles on one side, and Zeus seated on the other side, on the obverse. Moving on, when Alexander died, we know his empire was split into at least 4 pieces, ruled by governors who were companions, once upon a time, companions of Alexander the Great. Okay, so Bactria went to Seleucus, okay, one of his generals. Current Turkey went to Lysimachus, another general, and Egypt went to Ptolemy. Then this is where we got Ptolemaic Egypt, and Cleopatra later on was to marry one of the descendants of this very Ptolemy. Cleopatra is a very famous figure, historically speaking. So she married one of the descendants of Ptolemy. Actually, it's claimed that she was a mix from the Egyptians and the Ptolemies, right, from this very family. And then we had Macedonia, ruled by initially one of the sons of Alexander, and then he was killed, and then the later successors. So this coin is the reason why many people started to assume that Alexander was Dhul-Qarnayn of the Quran. Including some Muslim scholars, they mistakenly claimed that Alexander was the Dhul-Qarnayn of the Quran, because on this coin, Alexander is depicted wearing 2 horns, horns of Ammon. Ammon was an Egyptian god. Alexander, when he conquered Egypt, he went into the desert to find the oracle. The oracle basically was a place where people could get, how can I put it? Oracle was a place where you would find priests who would interpret your dreams, and they would tell you about the future. Okay, they would do some rituals and they would tell you what the future holds for you. So Alexander, to find the oracle, went into the desert and found this temple of Ammon in the middle of Egyptian desert. Okay, it was a very tough, difficult journey. And then Alexander became a devotee of Ammon. Okay, Ammon or Ammon, an Egyptian deity. And then as a devotee, he put these horns on his head, 2 horns. So you see the depiction of the horn. I don't know if you can see it, Paul, clearly. Can you see it?
I can. Yeah.
It's very clearly defined, right? You see his hair very nicely defined, and then you see the horn. Okay, the cuts of the horn. So, so he was basically, Dhul-Qarnayn literally means the one with 2 horns, right? So people started to assume, some Muslim scholars, that that could be Alexander. But then Alexander, we know, was a pagan. He was an idol worshipper.
I think in his commentary mentions that claim, I think.
Yes, exactly. And that's an error. That's an error. You know why? Because Dhul-Qarnayn was a believer. The Quran tells us he was a prehistoric king. He lived in the prehistoric period, and he was a believer. So Alexander was clearly not a believer in one. And he was a devotee. So you see Athena sitting here with a shield on the other side of the coin. You see Athena with a shield, okay, with Nike in one of her hands, or above.
Now, Nike is interesting because this word Nike, of course, is a trademark today. I think, does it not mean victory in Greek?
She's the Nike is the goddess of war, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or I'm not too sure, but either Athena or Nike, one of these two is the goddess of war. So you see Athena seated with a shield, with the spear, very clearly defined, and then you see Nike on top of her hand, and then you see the Greek text in front of Athena that states the name of the king, Lysimachus. Lysimachus is the governor, Lysimachus, who succeeded Alexander.
What's interesting, that coin is actually, I remember as a kid, some of the old coins from the early 20th century and the 19th century in England actually had quite a similar design. You had a kind of woman seated with a shield, Britannia, of course. Britannia,
absolutely.
It seems there's a conscious echo there of ancient coin depiction, I think. Interesting.
Yeah, I think this is the coin you're talking about. I have it here. This is King George. This is King George's penny from 1799. This is the penny from 1799. There you have King George. Sorry, let me
it's bring it dark. Yeah, I can't really see it.
Okay, sorry, 1 second. Can you see?
Not. Oh, I can see the head now. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
that's King George. Okay,
right.
this is a penny from 1799, and
Wow.
this is Britannia on the back depicted.
Now, yes, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah, and actually, quite a while after that, a similar kind of style on
Yeah,
coins.
even Victorian coins,
Yeah,
even
yeah, yeah,
Queen Victoria's coins have the same depiction: Britannica sitting with the shield, with the Union Jack,
yes.
and a spear. So the design is actually borrowed from these ancient coins.
Conscious imitation of ancient Greek style, and not just the coinage, in many other ways as well, of course.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now moving on, fast
Mm.
forward to the Romans. I have a coin from Constantine the Great. Okay,
Wow.
this
What?
is
My goodness me. Yeah,
this is a copper Phyllis. Okay, of Constantine.
right.
You'll probably be looking at a better image of this coin,
Yeah,
high resolution coin. But I'm struggling so that you can see it as well. It's
yeah,
very
yeah.
difficult to
It's a very
get the.
small coin. It's a very little coin, isn't it, compared to the
It's a little coin. You see, sorry. Okay, you see the depiction of Constantine there.
So this is Constantine the Great,
Yeah,
who
he
convened, of course, the Nicene Council of Nicaea, which led to the calling Jesus God unambiguously, and he was the Roman Empire, the whole of the Roman Empire. He attempted to unify the whole of the Roman Empire.
correct. And what's interesting about this coin is that on the other side you see uh, his the deity he was worshipping, Sol Invictus, the sun
Right.
god. Okay,
Yes.
so here you see Sol Invictus
Ah,
depicted with sun in one hand, and the text states Soli Invicto Comiti.
wow.
Soli Invicto Comiti, basically. So this is Sol Invictus depicted on the other side, uh, because Constantine was a devotee of sun god, and this is how we got our Sunday. Okay,
Hmm.
Sunday was the day when sun god was obviously worshipped specially, and even Christmas, the 25th of December, was
Hmm.
the day of the sun god who was worshipped like it was a feast day. And then the Christian leadership at the time in the 4th century, they decided that instead of celebrating the day for Jesus Christ on the 1st of January, we should all do it on the 25th of December to unite the Roman pagans or bring them closer to Christianity. We should move our day from the 1st of January to the 25th, which was the day of the sun god, right? So this is the historical context here on the coin. Constantine himself was a devotee of sun god, basically, right? And he's depicted on the coin. Now, moving fast forward very quickly because our time is running out. I have something very interesting. Coming to the Islamic period, when Muslims took much of the Roman and the Persian territory, they were faced with a challenge, and that challenge was the economic condition of the people. Okay, how do we handle the economies of these territories? Okay,
Hmm.
the Byzantines had left behind the gold solidus based economy. Okay, which was this coin. You can see it very quickly. Okay, this is a gold solidus of the Byzantines. You can see the emperor depicted on the coin, right? So
Wow.
this is an emperor depicted on the coin. This is Emperor Constans, who was a contemporary of Uthman radiallahu anh, the third caliph of Islam. He was a contemporary of Emperor Uthman. So you see Christian symbolism on this. You see a cross on the other side. Okay, you can
Oh, yeah.
see a cross clearly depicted. Okay,
Yeah.
you can see the cross. Okay, so this was the gold solidus. And then on the other hand, the Persians had the economy based on this Persian dram, okay,
Right.
which was about 4 grams of silver, right? So the Muslims are facing the situation that how do they deal with the Persian economy on the one hand and the
Mm.
Byzantine economy? So they didn't change anything initially. They were very pragmatic, very
Yeah.
practical about things. So the Sahaba and their successors, when they came to power in these territories, they kept the same currency. They did
Yeah.
not try to change the economic order of the day. So the markets kept flourishing and they actually prospered. So the Byzantine solidus was adopted in Roman territory, current day Syria, Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon, and Egypt, and much of North Africa. And then the Persian silver dirham was adopted in Persian territory. So Persian economies continued as normal as they were in the past. So slowly Muslims started to add their religious symbols on the coins. They didn't change the coinage. The dirham remained the same. The solidus was coming from the Romans. Muslims were selling commodities to the Romans. In return, they were getting these gold solidus, right? But what happened in the case of solidus is that when Muslims were selling papyri, which was necessary for Byzantine administration, papyri was used as paper at the time, as you might know, Paul. Paper wasn't yet invented. It was invented in China, no doubt, but it wasn't made universally available in the world. So
it's interesting. The Muslim world apparently had paper, used paper, far before Europe ever encountered paper. So Europe was paperless for quite some time.
Yeah, so that's why you see all documents written, all important religious documents written on vellum, on skin, on leather. Likewise, same was the case in the Roman world, in the Byzantine territory. The only cheap form of paper at that time was papyri that came from Egypt. Okay, and Muslims had taken Egypt. So now the Romans, the Byzantines had to buy papyri from Muslims. So the Muslims are adding Islamic formulas as letterheads to this paper. So they would write something like Muhammad Rasulullah, Muhammad the Messenger of God. So the Byzantines were not happy about that. So they complained to the Muslims that if you don't stop putting your religious formulas on this paper, papyri you sell to us, we're going to start putting insults against your prophet on our solidus. The solidus we send to you as a payment, you're not going to like what you find on them. For that reason, Abdul Malik bin Marwan, who was the caliph at the time, we're talking about 70s, the decade of 70s Hijri, after Hijrah, right? So he's advised by his advisors. Some claim it was Hajjaj bin Yusuf, others claim it was Khalid bin Yazid, one of the sons of Yazid, and other individuals at the court. They advised him that why don't we use these solidus, melt them, and mint our own currency? So Abdul Malik bin Marwan decided to experiment with a new dinar with new weight, which was about 4.25 gold in weight. And this is what came up as a result. This is one of the earliest dinars in Islamic history. Okay. So the first one was minted. The first fully Islamic dinar was minted in the year 77 AH after Hijri, or the year 77 of Islam. Okay, this one in my hand is from the very next year, the year 78. Okay, so I basically, you can see, I don't know if you can read it clearly, but it has, if you look at, I don't know if you can see it, but you will be looking at an image, a high resolution image. You're looking at it. If you read anti-clockwise, it says, Bismillah, Dureba, هذا الدينار في سنة 78. In the name of Allah, this dinar was struck in the year 78. And in the center, you see Allahu Ahad, Allahu Samad, Lam Yalid, Walam Yulad.
I say that's the 112th surah of the Quran, Surah Ikhlas, of course.
Exactly.
Expressing the monotheism of God and
Yeah, so you can see that the surah is inscribed on a dinar from the year 78 Hijri, when some of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad were alive. We have multiple companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, alive, including Anas bin Malik, the famous Anas bin Malik, one of the young servants of the Prophet ﷺ, who narrated tons of reports from the Prophet, peace be upon him, because he died.
This is seriously early. I mean, this is actual tangible artifacts from the time of the Sahaba themselves.
Yes.
And what's interesting, I've noticed that all the coins you've shown up till now have had human features on. They've had portraits, they've had gods, goddesses, or they've had human figures like Alexander. Now, for the first time, we're coming across coinage without any kind of physical manifestations at all. No portraits, no deities, no pictures, nothing. It's just pure language. It's the language of the Quran mostly. So this is a kind of revolution in the illustration of coins, isn't it? Particularly Islamically illustrating the coins.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Muslim coins, Islamic coins, were to remain on this model for the next 400 to 500 years until the Seljuks started to put imagery on coins later, right? Seljuks of Rome in particular. Okay, we start to see some images of people or human beings on coins from that period. I mean, animals were put on coins, no doubt. Animals were put on coins for design, for beauty, and things like that during the Abbasid period, no doubt. But this was to remain the standard model.
Right.
Succeeding Muslim dynasties would use same chapters of the Quran, Surah Ikhlas 112, same verse anti-clockwise on the obverse, where we have, I mean, I forgot to show you the obverse because you saw the reverse. Okay, the obverse has the Shahada, okay, on it. You can see here, it says in the center it says, La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. Okay, I don't know if it's clearly visible, but then if you read anti-clockwise, it has a verse of the Quran taken from chapter 9, verse 33. Muhammad Rasulullah arsalahu bil huda wa din al-haq liyudhhirahu ala ad-din kulli walau kariha al-mushrikun. So that verse basically means Muhammad, the prophet of God, who has been sent with guidance and the true way, and this way will dominate all other ways in the future. So this is like a declaration from Abdul Malik bin Marwan and his entourage or his followers or his, let's say, empire, that now we don't need the Byzantine Solidus with all that Christian symbolism. And amazingly, one may question, why did they choose chapter 112 in particular for this coin? And not many people know this. This was a direct response to Christian theology.
I guess that, yeah, absolutely, yeah, absolutely,
So the Christians, the Byzantines, are putting a cross on their solidus, their gold solidus, as you saw earlier, right? So the cross basically denotes the life of Jesus Christ or his death on the cross, for example, and the cross is a symbol of Christianity. So in response, the Muslims put the Quranic response to Christian theology on their coins, which is what? Say, God is one. He's not three. He's not a trinity. He's not three in one. He is one. He is neither begotten nor does he beget, right? Yeah. He does not beget. He is not begotten. So that's again a direct response to Christian theology. And there's no one like him. Don't liken him to human beings. Yeah. Don't see human beings in him, and vice versa. Okay, or don't see God in human beings, right? So there is no one like him. So this is a very powerful response to the Christian theology, which was being depicted on the coins of the Byzantines, with the emperor on one side carrying a cross, and the other side you see a cross and the name of the emperor. So this was, so the Muslim dinar was a direct response to gold solidus. So you see, Paul, how much history coins tell, how much one can actually learn from coins, looking at what is being depicted, the language, the culture, the religious.
But what I know is that you're sitting in London, as I am, and you actually have a physical artifact, some actual tangible material substance from the time of the Sahaba. The Sahaba themselves might have touched coinage itself, and this is an extraordinary physical link just between you now and the time of the Sahaba, 1,400, 1,300 years ago, and that itself is really impressive. It's not just about ideas; it's about real things we can touch and see and weigh and measure and examine. It's real. It happened. The Sahaba knew about this, and they were really doing things, and we had the physical evidence. That for us today is very impressive, I think.
Absolutely, Paul. And I can tell you one thing with absolute confidence and certainty, that if the Sahaba did not touch these coins, Tabi'een, people who saw Sahaba with their own eyes, definitely touched these coins, because the ones who were striking these coins in the Byzantine territory, let's say in the case of the dinar, because most dinars were minted at Damascus, the city of Damascus, and there were many Sahaba living in Damascus at the time. So these people who were making these dies, the die makers and the coin makers, people who were working to create these coins or to strike these coins, they could see Sahaba walking around. I'm pretty sure when it was time for prayer, these very die makers and coin strikers would go to the masjid, the Umayyad mosque, and pray there, because that was the central mosque of Damascus. So they would go and pray, and they would come back to their work, right? They would see the Sahaba in the first row, in the front row. So these people who struck these coins would definitely have seen the Sahaba, if not the Sahaba, touched these.
This is very special because I've had the huge privilege of speaking to Dr. Sidki, who's a leading expert on Quranic manuscripts, and he told me, and he's obviously said this elsewhere, that we now have the actual physical manuscripts dating right back to the time, at least, of the Sahaba, if not to the Prophet himself. And so we now have all the material evidence that it's not disputed anymore. It's been carbon dated, scientifically verified, open to public inspection. All of the Quran goes back to the time of the Prophet. We now have coinage that go back to at least the time of the people who succeeded the companions of the Prophet. So it's all coming real. It's and open to investigation and public examination. I like that.
Absolutely. And this evidence is overwhelming. Okay, the Quran is a public text when the very disciples of the Prophet of Islam are walking around. Okay. Maybe as old men, they are elderly, but they are alive. They are the authorities who are approving the text on these coins. The coins are the most common thing that would have been used at that time. Everyone needs money. Everyone uses money, to buy anything. Even basic necessities, you need money. And on that money, you had Islamic formulas. Moving on to the next coin, which is a very interesting coin again. We are told in the history of Islam about the Kharijites, the Khawarij, a group of extremists who would often rebel against the authorities of the time, starting from Ali bin Abi Talib and going all the way up to the Abbasid period.
And today, we still have remnants of them today, of course, but that's a different subject.
Unfortunately, we still have to put up with that kind of stuff today, this day and age. Amazingly, the remnants, or the traces of behavior still exist very much. The Khawarij were not extreme just because of the theology, but there was a behavior, a pattern in the behavior which identified them as Khawarij. Because how did the Prophet identify them? They will be very rash, very brute, very rude, very quick to judge, and very quick to attack you, right? Look around you. In the Muslim world, unfortunately, we have many people who have these tendencies and these characteristics. They will judge you very quickly. They will attack you. They're very rude, very rash. They're very rude to the scholars in particular. They won't respect any authority. They won't respect any scholarship. They will degrade you and basically throw you under the bus immediately, right? This is what stood out about the Khawarij. And now I'm going to introduce you to a Khawarij coin actually minted by the Kharijites, right?
Yeah. I didn't know this sort of thing. How extraordinary.
Yeah. So the Kharijites, for some time, temporarily took the city of Kufa in Iraq in the year 128 Hijri, when the Umayyads were facing sharp decline, politically speaking. The Abbasids were coming up. The Abbasid revolution was on the horizons, right? And this is when many opportunistic groups, they started to rise and they started to take territories until the Abbasids came later on, and they ousted all of these minor entities and groups. So Kharijites took the city of Kufa in the year 128 Hijri. What you can see on the edge up here, it's a very tiny writing. There is that Kharijite slogan. Even though it's taken from the Quran, but it is misinterpreted, misrepresented by the Kharijites for their ends, for their theology. So the slogan is La hukma illa lillah. La hukma illa lillah. Basically, there is no governance except for Allah. The principle is correct, no doubt. The principle we don't debate, but the way it was applied by the Kharijites to attack the authorities of the time, Muslim authorities of the time, was completely misplaced. And this is why they were called the Kharijites. So you can see where my finger is, my top finger, this one, you can see on the edge, very small writing, very tiny writing, microscopic. It's written La hukma illa lillah. Then you see the rest of the coin is very similar to the standard Umayyad coin from 128 Hijri with Surah 112 on the back again as
Okay.
normal. Okay, you can see the surah there, 112 again, and the same formula anti-clockwise taken from 933, surah 9 verse 33, etc., etc. So again, this coin tells stories. It tells us history that the Kharijites, they took the city of Kufa in the year 128 and they minted these coins.
Gosh.
Very quickly moving on to one of my, how can I put it, one of my babiys, if you like, yeah.
Is that what you call them, your babies?
Yeah, that's right.
It's all coming out now.
Yeah. So this is an Anglo-Saxon imitation of the gold dinar.
Oh, very nice.
This is what I've been talking about, Paul, with you.
Saxon. This is English.
This is an English production. Before there was England. There was England, right? Because this was minted somewhere around between the year 774 to 790 CE.
Yeah, that's before England. Yeah.
When Offa was ruling the territory of Mercia in current day. Okay, so this is basically an exact copy of an Abbasid dinar minted in the year 157 Hijri by Caliph Mansur in Baghdad. So because the Abbasid dinar was the dollar of the day, it was the most accepted currency in the world at the time, partly due to the quantity of gold, because the gold quantity was so good in those dinars. French and English kings at the time, they started to imitate those dinars for better economic prospects. Yeah. Even when they would pay a tax to the Pope, in Rome at the time, they would pay the tax in mancus, because this is what a mancus looked like.
But it's hugely ironic. So you're saying that the people would pay tribute to the Pope, Christian kings, with Islamic inscriptions on them, saying there is no God but God.
Absolutely. So, not knowing what they are copying.
No. I wonder if the Pope realized that he was receiving tribute, Islamic tribute like that, which actually obviously corrected his faith. Interesting.
Imagine if the Pope knew that he is receiving money in tax. Basically, that has the formula inscribed on it, Muhammad Rasulullah, Muhammad the messenger of God. I don't know what that Pope would think at the time. Even the king, the Mercian king Offa, or the English king, Anglo-Saxon king Offa, had no idea what the die makers were copying, because the die makers were copying this beautiful Abbasid dinar with some alien strange formulas, not knowing what these formulas actually constitute. And the formula was Muhammad Rasulullah on one side of the coin. On the other side, you have La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. There is no God except Allah, and He alone deserves to be worshipped.
So today we call this creeping Sharia, of course. You get something, creeping Sharia. But it's one of the great rich ironies of history that Christian tribute to the Pope was given in the name of the Prophet of Islam. And I think it's a delicious irony.
Yes, absolutely. And what's more amazing is that these coins were minted in Carolingian France and Anglo-Saxon Britain. I mean, you can see the other side here. Again, it's crudely copied, but it's a good job. For those guys who didn't know the Arabic language, they have done an amazing job. You can't easily tell that this is an imitation. You really have to look very carefully and closely to see the errors in spelling. There are a few wows and few alifs missing, right? So they were copied.
You're saying that was this manufactured in what is today France? You mentioned the Carolingian.
No. This one, in my opinion, this one was produced in Britain. There were those produced in France as well. So we have two territories where these coins were produced: Carolingian France or Italy, northern Italy, or Britain. Right. These particular imitations of the Abbasid dinar were only produced in Britain and Carolingian France or northern Italy.
I'm just enjoying the irony there of France, or what became known as France, producing Islamic coinage, particularly recent history of France. Again, Islam is there, right? Even before what we call France, Islam was there in terms of coinage.
This is Charlemagne. This is when Charlemagne was ruling France, and the irony is that Charlemagne's grandfather, Charles Martel, had defeated one of the Muslim incursions in France, and later on his own grandson was minting coins taken from the Abbasids, which is very strange. Okay, so we have now covered, Paul, successfully, hopefully, 8 coins. Okay,
one more
finally, the last coin I would want to discuss with you very quickly to possibly surprise our viewers about how important coins can be, historically speaking. This is a penny from the 18th century, 1700s, that depicts an African slave in chains. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, yes.
Okay, now you can see it, right?
Very distinctive.
And if you read clockwise from 7 o'clock, it says, "Am I not a man and a brother?" A very, very well-known 18th century figure.
Yes.
The abolitionists who were working hard in 18th century Britain and Ireland, they had issued these pennies as a propaganda tool to disseminate their message in the wider society, because penny was the most used coin or denomination in Britain at the time. So they came up with this genius idea to put their propaganda on the coin, to abolish slavery. And on the other hand, you see 2 hands meeting or shaking, okay? And the message on the coin basically is that slavery and oppression will cease to exist.
Gosh.
Okay? It says slavery and oppression will cease to exist. So this is something people can take pride in, people who come from Britain, that this is the kind of work some British human rights activists in the 18th century, or abolitionists, who were essentially human rights activists, right? These are human rights activists. So they produce stuff like this to disseminate their message. So you would see this figure of an African slave in chains on pottery, on cutlery, on spoons, on cups, on all sorts of things, on carrier bags. They wanted to show the world, in particular in Britain, they wanted the people to see that this is what we are dealing with. This is what we are doing to Africa. Okay, so this is an African in chains who is saying.
What was the date of that again, do you think?
This is 1780s.
Oh, 1780s. So
1780s. Okay.
Just after the American Revolution, then, and just before. Just before the
American Revolution.
Even during the French Revolution, 1789. So, I mean, was that actual coinage in circulation as such? Or
yes, absolutely. This was legal tender. Tender in the sense that this was exactly the same as the already used penny, the penny that was being used in Britain at the time. And then on the rim, I mean, it's very difficult to show you that. On the rim, very thin writing, it is written that this penny is or can be used in Dublin, Cork, and Belfast.
Gosh.
Okay, and that's on the rim. When I say the rim, I mean the edge here. That's written on the edge that this penny can be used in Dublin. I don't know how they wrote that in the 18th century, how they managed to do that. It's just phenomenal. Okay, so this is it. These are my 9 coins I wanted to share with you.
Extraordinary coins. I mean, we've gone from the ancient Greeks. There was the first coin that might have been even handled by Plato himself, the father of Western philosophy, you know, who was the disciple of Socrates and who was the teacher or mentor of Aristotle, who then taught Alexander the Great. And we saw Alexander the Great's dad on one of the Philip of Macedon. And then we went on to Constantine, the Emperor Constantine in the 4th century, who of course gave us the Nicene Creed and the earliest complete Bible we have during the 350s at that time in the British Library. And then we went on to the Abbasids and the Quaritch and so on, and right up to the anti-slavery coinage we've just seen. It's absolutely extraordinary history, and the real sense that history can be told, as you have done very successfully, Adnan. History can be told in amazing coins. That it's not just in books, that there are physical artifacts we can look at, quantify, measure, date in our own hands. And that is an extraordinary way of experiencing history rather than just reading about it in books, is what I normally do. But you actually have physical remnants of history in your house, which is quite amazing, really.
I don't actually store coins in my house.
You don't? Because we're going to burgle you later, probably.
Yeah, I don't. If there's anything valuable, I have a storage space for that, and I don't keep anything valuable.
Very good, because someone might have thought, right, we'll pop round to Adnan's and nick some coins. Okay.
This is, you see, I'm a numismatist. I have been doing this for many years, for decades, and this is the first lesson any expert numismatist will teach you, that any valuable coins are like a treasure. So you don't keep them in your house, or so you have special storage spaces for those things. And this is where, so it's like a fraternity, we have numismatic fraternity. So they share knowledge, information with each other. So we get together and we store our valuable things in a specific place.
No, don't tell us. It's not a hole in your garden, I have. It's not you dug a deep hole.
No, it's not. It's not anything like that. No,
okay.
Absolutely.
I've got one final question. I really want to ask you. If I could grant your wish, or your wish could be granted, Adnan, the one coin in the world that you would love to own, love to possess as your own, what would it be? What's that coin that you really, really want, do you think?
Oh, that's a very good question, man. There are few, but if you were to give me a choice to own one coin, I would say standing caliph. Oh. Standing caliph is a coin minted by Abdul Malik bin Marwan as an experimental measure. Okay, this was before he minted his 77 Hijri dinar. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, the first properly, completely Islamic dinar was minted in the year 77. But Abdul Malik was experimenting with different coins, different designs, before he came to this particular design we saw today, right? So he minted few coins with different designs. One of those coins was he standing himself as the caliph depicted on the coin with the sword, okay? And around him is the formula La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, okay? So you see a man with a beard, with long hair, with a thobe, with a lavish thobe, and with the sword. So if you Google standing caliph dinar, you will see the coin that I dream to have one day, inshallah.
Inshallah. Well, I hope you do, because then you could talk about it endlessly on TV programs, and it'd be wonderful.
Absolutely. You never know, and it's very costly, by the way. It's extremely difficult to get hold of. It's been sold in auctions for hundreds of thousands of pounds. Yeah.
Gosh, extraordinary. Well, that's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much indeed, Adnan. It's been an absolute pleasure looking at these amazing coins and how they show us real history. This is not theoretical. This is actual reality, and it's actually fantastic. So thank you very much. Long may you continue to collect and educate us about the significance of coins and history, to bring it, really bring it to life in a way which we can't really do just through talking about the past. So I think what you're doing is absolutely fascinating, and I know it's hugely popular. And I bumped into you at Speakers Corner last Sunday, and a steady stream of people coming up to you saying, "Oh, I thank you for doing this, thank you for doing that." It was very embarrassing for you, I'm sure, but people are obviously showing their appreciation for how much they've learned from you and continue to learn, and long may that continue, inshallah. So,
inshallah.
Thank you very much.
From us.
Okay, well, until next time, thank you very much, Adnan.
Thank you all.